Hello folks, and I hope you're all doing well. I would like to, on this occasion, give you all a proper welcome to 2021. As some of you may know, it has been quite a while since I've put up a video. I think probably about 2 months. I did do one there a couple of weeks back just on a particular subject. But it's been a while since I have given you a kind of an update on what's going on, and there's been quite a bit of activity. So what I'm going to try to do today is to break this up into a few different segments, and we can show you some of the projects that I have been working on. Now, before we get into that and any of the technical stuff, there's just a few kind of, I guess you could call them, structural elements that I want to talk about. The first is that with a bit of luck, you will now have a choice to view this and future videos on either YouTube or Vimeo. Now, why am I doing that? Well, first of all, I just want to say straight off the bat, it is not anything untoward. It's not YouTube trying to silence me or any of that kind of thing. Rather, I suppose, as the saying goes, it's not you, it's me. So some of you may be aware that YouTube, and I guess Google being the parent, have brought in some changes to their terms of service in the US last year, and they're being extended out to the rest of us here this year. And the biggest one, and the one that kind of has made me push towards an alternative platform, is the way that they handle advertising. Now, again, just very briefly, for those of you that may not be aware, YouTube make, I guess, most of their revenue from placing advertisements within videos that people upload. And there is this kind of a revenue sharing scheme thing that they have, whereby the person that puts the video up gets a certain amount of the advertising revenue and they get the rest. And there have been various changes to that over the years, and if you want to drive yourself bonkers, just do a search on YouTube for ad revenue changes and things like that, and you'll get people ranting away to beat the band. Now, none of that really bothered me too much, because in my little corner of the web here, I never bothered having advertising in any of my videos. There was 2 reasons for that. The first reason was that I certainly didn't think it would be beneficial for people piling their way through one of my 2-hour specials to be getting ads every few minutes for razor blades or VPNs or hair care products or whatever they happen to be trying to sell us on that particular day. And the second thing is, even if I had opted into that, my little arena here is so tiny that I probably wouldn't have seen $10 a month of revenue out of it. So I prefer to let people have the choice. If they want to support me, they can go on to Patreon or PayPal or any other means, but you don't have to be forced to watch advertisements. Now, the big change that they're bringing in, and did bring in the US last year, is that people that upload videos such as myself will no longer have control as to whether there are advertisements in the videos or not. So I guess it is their way of trying to push everyone towards getting in on this particular bandwagon. Now, I looked at it a bit, and I just couldn't find a way that it would be in any way beneficial to me or beneficial to you, the people that are viewing the videos. And I've been going around in rings a little bit, trying to figure out a way to circumvent that. And really, with these kind of things, there is no way other than to use an alternative platform. And I'd been mulling that around and so forth. And there's a recent incident that I'm not going to be getting into here, but that meant that I really wanted to get a video up there a few weeks ago where I was explaining how to use a particular type of firmware for one of the VCU products. And as luck would actually have it, I had the video all done, edited up, and for whatever reason, could have been something on my end, it could have been a broadband issue, it could have been YouTube's issue, but it just would not upload. It just wouldn't do it. I spent about 3 hours trying to figure out what was going on there, and I couldn't. And I just said, right, okay, nothing like a bit of a deadline to move things along. So I'd heard about Vimeo, I'd been looking at them as an alternative, so I just quickly signed up an account with them, and I got the video up there. I have had a few requests, by the way, to put that video up on YouTube, and I will do, assuming whatever problem that affected me there a few weeks ago has now rectified itself. And as I said at the beginning, the plan is that we'll have future videos now will be on both YouTube and Vimeo. And there are ways around the whole advertisement thing for people that are viewing, like you can pay them or you can use ad blockers and stuff like that. But my own sense is that I want to give people that alternative so that you just don't need to worry about that sort of thing. And by the way, I'm not going to potentially limit myself to just Vimeo. I've had a few posts on social media and a few contacts over the weeks and months from people recommending other platforms, and I'll definitely be giving those guys a look as well. So that is, I guess, not a very quick update on the whole thing about the video posting and so forth. So that was one of the reasons I haven't posted much video. Other thing has been, there's been quite a few changes going around and quite a few things in my personal life that I've had to concentrate on. And although it may not seem like it, personally I do need to be in a particular mood to, you know, to sit here and make a video and demonstrate stuff and edit it and all that sort of thing. And I just couldn't find, I guess, the motivation within myself to do so. So my apologies for that I haven't been churning out more boring videos for you. So I will definitely attempt to bore you some more across multiple platforms over the coming weeks and months. Now, the first thing that I'm going to jump in on here are going to be the VCUs and what has been going on there, because that's by far and away one of the biggest things that I have been working on. I'm then going to touch on some of the Tesla Model 3 projects because there's definitely some updates happening there, some very exciting stuff. And finally, to round out definitely a world-class video production here, we will be showing you what I think just might be a world first motor turning here out on the bench. So without further ado, let's get straight in here to the VCUs. Alrighty folks, so welcome to the electronics bench here, and what we're going to talk to you about in this segment are some VCU boards. Now first of all, what do I mean by a VCU, just very briefly? Well, a VCU in Damien land stands for Vehicle Control Unit. You'll hear them called all manner of things, but in this case, what it is just a PCB, some components on it, a microcontroller, and usually something like a header or something like this where we can connect cables to it, and it allows us to control various aspects of an electric vehicle conversion. Primarily with these two cards here, they allow us to control motors and inverters and do things like pre-charging and driving dash displays in a car and things like that. Now, I'm going to talk about these two boards here first. The one you see here is one that I sell as a VCU for the Nissan Leaf inverter and motor. I've proven it working with the Gen 1. It might indeed work with the Gen 2. I'm not 100% sure on that. And the one here, you see that's got a processor missing from it, is for the Lexus GS450H gearbox and inverter. So this one here, for example, up until recently was, I guess, the kind of central brain for all of the activity in the E65 7 series build that I've been doing, and this guy here would have been in the E46 Touring. So let's see here, timing. I think it was either around the end of November or the beginning of December of last year, 2020 that is, that I needed to order some more GS450 VCUs. And turned out that JLC PCB didn't have the SAM3 microcontroller, so this guy here, that I use across all of these cards in stock. And when I contacted them, they told me, and I think there was probably some cross lines here, that they weren't going to restock this part for quite some time. Now you can still buy it, and what I've been doing is I've been basically fitting it here for customers, and it's quite a time-consuming process, because I think it's a 144 pin part. So it has to be drag soldered, tested, all that kind of thing to make sure that I haven't done something stupid. So really, that wasn't something that I was kind of happy to be having to do, and it certainly wouldn't have been something that I'd have wanted to do on a long-term basis. Now, additionally to that, it had always been very much in my mind that although these are perfectly working, and you know, if I wouldn't I wouldn't have let them out into the wild if I hadn't verified that they worked in my own vehicles. They do require quite a knowledge of, I guess, microcontroller programming in order to configure them for an end user's specific build. And this has been something that is not new to me, and I have struggled with that. And I think, you know, early last year I even put a request up on the openinverter forum in this particular section where people can, you know, request help with things, that if we could come up with a kind of a nice user-friendly front end for these two particular VCUs. And unfortunately, I guess for, you know, a variety of reasons, nobody really jumped in there to make that happen. So I'm also somebody that is not by any means any kind of a software engineer. The last formal training that I had for software, particularly embedded stuff, was over 20 years ago, doing 8-bit PIC microcontroller assembly. And in those intervening years, my life pulled me in, you know, a whole variety of different directions. So really, when it comes to the high-level languages and things like that needed to, for example, program, you know, a 32-bit microcontroller such as this guy, and, you know, have a web-based interface for it on one of these, you know, Wi-Fi modules and things like that, I'm not at all afraid to say that I was just, you know, completely outside of my ability. And additionally to that, I've got, you know, only another 100 projects pulling me away too. So it was just something that I kind of left it there, hoping that, you know, particularly some of the people that had gotten these up and running in their vehicles might, you know, pay something back around. But unfortunately, that did not occur. Now, keeping in mind then, we were looking at potentially having a supply problem here for the Atmel SAM3 processor. Coupling that with the fact that, as I say, we had this kind of a user interface problem, let's say. I sat myself down and I thought, okay, well, you know, if no one else is going to do it, I might as well throw myself on the grenade, I guess, and see if I can make something happen. And so what I did was, I, as usual, decided to rip off some of Johannes's hard work, and this guy here is the result of it. Let me just pull off the Wi-Fi here. So I'm probably going to see quite a few similarities between these two cards here. In fact, they're almost identical, apart from using a different microcontroller. And the microcontroller that we have on this board here is a STM32F105. This is the 64-pin version that I'm using here. And the reason for that was that I was basically then able to leverage off the work that Johannes has done over, you know, I guess the last decade plus. And I embarked upon something that I've called, that I, well, initially called the Zombieverter project. And I called it that because what I had really done was I had taken the whole openinverter firmware package and basically cut the head off it, and decided to use its body to try to develop a much more wide-ranging and more user-friendly VCU that would do the job of, you know, the likes of the GS450, the likes of the Nissan Leaf one, and we'd bring these into one. And we could then also add in further steps if all of this stuff worked out. Okay. Now, fortunately, it actually has and is working out. Let me grab something for you here. Forgot to bring this down when I was setting up the old studio. Here we have the beastie. Now, the beastie here is ultimately where this guy is going to go. This is a much larger enclosure with much more I/O capability on it. And very soon, we're going to be moving the Zombieverter project from this form factor board to one that's going to fit inside this enclosure here. And the reason for doing that is that it is going to do a lot more ultimately than just the things that we can currently do with the SAM3 based VCU products. Now, a couple things here that I want to clarify straight away here. So, first thing is that the whole purpose of this project is to make the user experience easier. And the whole purpose of making the user experience easier is so we can get more people to be able to use this and be able to reuse existing drivetrain components like Lexus, like Toyota, like Nissan, like whatever else, Mitsubishi, and they can have a box like this that has a pinout and has a wiring diagram, and you don't need to take the cover off the box, you don't need to program the box, you don't even need to know what's going on in there. There could be a mini Damien in there pressing switches, and you can talk to it over Wi-Fi with your computer, laptop, phone, whatever. And so you just literally have a pull down menu, and we'll show you some of this on a screen capture soon. And you can say, well, this is the car that I have, and this is the drivetrain that I have. So I'm going to calibrate my throttle pedal, set a couple of parameters here, and I'm driving down the road. That's pretty ambitious. But I've found that I guess there's no point in there's no point in not trying. You know, you've got to try to put your foot forward, and you know, maybe you fall down, maybe you get swallowed by a sinkhole, or maybe, fortunately, you actually manage to find your way somewhere better. Now, I embarked on this without any real belief that I was going to get someplace with this. But what has happened has been, you know, quite amazing to me, is that there's a bunch of really talented people now, really talented software engineers that have jumped in, have taken my you know, play school level attempts at writing C programming, you know, if then else is about as far as things go for me. And we now have, I've basically got this guy running 2 cars and a test bench for me. And it's only been about 2 months. And that, you know, getting this part means that, you know, it now makes sense for me to move on to the big kahuna. Now, just yesterday, I hit a particular milestone with this guy. And that milestone was that I now have, as I say, 2 cars running with this. So we have a combination of BMW 7 Series and a Lexus hybrid drivetrain in it. We have a BMW 3 Series and a Nissan Leaf Gen 1 drivetrain in it. And they're now working. So I'm going to do a lot more testing on them, there's a lot more polish to do, but they're running and driving with this guy now. So that milestone that I've reached with this now brings us back full circle to where we began here, which is what happens now for these existing designs. Well, firstly, I guess before I get to that, I should say this is not going on sale for a good while yet. Okay, I should have probably said that right off the bat, but hey, that's me. So, okay, what we now have on this guy, and I'll show you on the screen capture now in a minute. It is crude. There's a lot of things on there that still aren't working yet, but you can literally take this guy now and you could do any combination of BMW 7 Series, 5 Series, 3 Series, Nissan Leaf drivetrain, Lexus hybrid, GS450 hybrid drivetrain. Put this guy in there, connect it up, choose on a menu what you want to do, and drive the car. Okay? So you don't need to program it. You don't need to take the lid off it. You don't need to know anything about C programming, because I sure as hell don't. And you can talk to it over Wi-Fi, and you can even update the software over Wi-Fi with it. You don't need to ever, you know, dig into it. Okay? Now, do we notice something that I had fitted to these guys? Yes, they have the Wi-Fi header on here, and we do have a kind of a simplistic little gauge-based Wi-Fi system that I had, I had paid someone to develop, so there could be, you know, just a little front end, so you could see some gauges for power and voltage and current and things like that. Well, the next phase for these guys now is that although these are different microcontrollers, they are in fact based on the same core architecture, which is the ARM Cortex M3. And crucially, they're both supported by a project called libopencm3. And libopencm3 is basically a set of libraries that allow us to communicate with all the goodies on these little chips. And the next stage then is another set of a higher level of library called libopeninverter that Johannes developed. So as of yesterday, I now have a third-party developer working to port libopeninverter from the ST microcontroller to the Atmel microcontroller. That's our first step. Once we have that step completed, that code that we have working here now on our zombie verter is going to be backported so that it'll work on both the GS450 and Nissan Leaf VCU boards. So these ones that I've been selling, I don't know for how long now, will all have the capability to benefit from the development work that's been done on the zombie verter. So, time frame on that, I'm not even going to guess, but I'm going to say it's going to be probably summer before we have something that I can backport out there to allow people to use. Because, as always, I'll have to test it first, because this is, although they are the same core architecture, they are quite different in how a lot of the peripherals and things like that are implemented on here. So that is where we're going with our existing VCU boards. Now, this guy here, as I said, is probably not really going to get sold. I am going to make some of them available to some people for beta testing and some feedback, because it's very important that it's not just me using this whole interface thing. And I have had quite a few, I guess, what's the word for it, volunteers on Patreon who are going to help me with this. I think I have about 2 more of these left that I can give out, and I will be doing that so we can get some feedback on this. But the main move now is that we hit the milestone here to allow the backporting project to commence. This hardware here is going to be expanded to the big box, and the big box basically has got a 60-pin header on here, whereas the existing ones are based on a 40-pin. There we go. Okay, so I'm getting myself another 20 pins, and there's going to be some exciting little features going in here. Not really going to go into what some of them are, and it's not any kind of a secret. It's just because I haven't finalized quite a few of them yet. I'm going back and forth with a couple of guys on the Zombieverter development thread there now to see what the best way to go is, because want to get this hardware for the big brother, big zombie, or whatever you want to call it, reasonably right, not the first time. I never get anything right the first time, but get it right the second or the third time, so that we will have a kind of a good definitive hardware here that can then over time have the features brought online by software updates via Wi-Fi. So folks, this is where things stand with our VCUs. I hope that helps to clarify where we're going with all this stuff. End of the day, it's not about me, you know, retiring to Lanzarote off your back. It is more about you getting to drive your cars as better and as easily as you can, by me trying to, I guess, try to pull together some people and some knowledge and some experiences here, so that we can all benefit from it. So, all right guys, I have rabbited on this segment way too long, so I'm going to stop and we will get on to our next segment. So I'll put a link in the description to the Zombieverter thread. It tends to ramble around a bit, and it's going to do that. And as I say, please do. It's, you know, very clearly specified on the first post that this is just a development project. It's ultimately this is now kind of, this hardware version is kind of to allow us to get to a point where we can say, yeah, you know what, this actually works. We can now backport, and then we can move on to the big zombie. So, all right, check out the thread, have a look. If you are good with embedded software, we'd love to have you along, even if it's just to, I guess, tell me that I'm a moron, because that always helps motivate me. Right, Next segment. Okay folks, welcome out to the test bench. I know by now you're probably absolutely sick of hearing about VCU stuff, so we're going to do some more VCU stuff. But this time we are going to demonstrate to you something that I think might be just a world first. I'm not 100% sure. So certainly don't quote me on that one. So those of you that have watched some of my videos in the past will be reasonably familiar with what you're looking at here. But what we have is we have a transaxle and an inverter from a Gen 3 Toyota Prius. This particular transaxle has had its power split device welded in it. So basically MG1 and MG2 can provide torque to the output, basically the drive shaft flanges. And you will have seen this gearbox and actually this inverter as well working in a previous video with one of my dual motor boards that we have available for the Gen 3 Prius inverter, that allow us to use both MG1 and MG2 to provide vehicle traction. Now, one of the things that I really liked, and present tense, I still like it, about the Lexus GS450H gearbox and inverter was that we didn't have to modify the inverter at all. We could literally just, you know, plug into the thing as if it were still in the car and communicate with it. Turns out that most of the Toyota hybrid systems of this particular era, so I think, and I'm probably wrong here again, something like either 2008, 2009 to 2014, I think they tend to do a 5-year life cycle on these, so be they Lexus or be they Toyota branded, so GS450, whatever else, and you know, Prius, Auris, Yaris, all those work on the very same hardware level communication as the GS450H. And that is a synchronous serial over CAN system. And that's what the GS450H VCU that we saw on the bench in there did. It basically told the GS450H inverter that it was actually in a GS450H, and please give me some torque. So why can't we do that then with the front wheel drive systems from the same era? Well, turns out we can, and by we I mean mostly the work done by a very kind gentleman on the zombie verter tread that I believe has a Gen 3 Yaris, and went ahead and hacked up his own car for our benefit and grabbed a whole load of that synchronous serial data, and he has gone ahead and decoded that stuff, which is not easy. There's tons of it. There's no DBC files, there's nothing to help us along, and he has been actively participating and assisting the development of the software for the zombie verter. And in fact, only yesterday did we manage to get this little movable feast here to actually respond to some torque commands, and I'll be demonstrating that to you now in a few moments. So Gen 3 inverter is connected to our zombie verter VCU, flashing away merrily. It's running some I guess you'd call it alpha software at the minute. And we can command torque to MG2, possibly as well MG1, I'm not 100% sure yet. But we can command the inverter to rotate the motors in here by means of the VCU without having to modify the inverter or remove its logic board. Now, further interestingly, I happen to have, that I've prepared earlier for you, a series of Gen 3 logic boards from quite a few different inverters. This one is from a 2014 Prius. This one is from a, I think it's either 2013 or 2014 Yaris. This one, either Yaris or Auris. And guess what happens when I open up this inverter and put all of these boards in it? Well, they all work the very same way. This inverter actually came from a Lexus CT200H. So right now, it looks like we've got ourselves 4, if you count the one that's already in here, vehicles that we can get front wheel drive trains out of and use them in EV conversions without having to modify the inverter, without having to take the cover off the damn thing even. So, other really neat things about this Toyota stuff are, it doesn't care what voltage that we give it. I'm going to give it 60 volts from a cheap and nasty power supply, and it will say, yeah, that's fine, I'll work with that. Obviously it won't spin up to maximum speed, but it will spin. Additionally, it doesn't care about all of these interlock wires and other nonsense here. It just says, give me 12 volts and give me synchronous serial please, and you say jump and I say how high. And if I happen to shut the VCU off in the middle of the whole communication, and you know, obviously this will stop making torque, but then I can just turn the VCU back on and it'll say, oh, you're awake again, let's start spinning. Whereas other Japanese car makers, not a million miles away from me here, tend to have a, shall we say, a much more uptight view about these kind of things. So enough about that. Let's get to the semi-exciting part, I hear you say. Let's see this sucker work. Now, I haven't turned on the high voltage here because otherwise we get to listen to inverter whine. So let's listen to some inverter whine. So we are providing here a whopping 62 volts directly into the high voltage bus here on the side of the inverter, which I will show you in a moment. The fact that we're whining means that we're ready to go and it will respond to a torque request. Over here on the VCU, I have a little potentiometer, which is not the best choice for this because it's very coarse. But we will hopefully send it a torque command. So send it a torque command, yeah. Come on, baby. Don't make me look like a fool on camera. Oh, okay, there we go. Phew. There we go, folks. As I said, not 100% sure, but I think this is the first time that a Gen 3 transaxle and stock, I guess, inverter has ran outside of a vehicle. If I'm not the first person to do this, that's perfectly cool, but if you are, and you know more about this, then do please consider contributing to my retirement fund. I mean helping out the community and benefiting everyone. God, I have to cut that bit out. Anyway, at the minute we can only run in one direction, and I just load the software on and look cool. Other people do all the work. So Yes, we can only run in one direction here, so we're still trying to churn through the data to figure out you know, the MG1 torque commands and the reverse torque commands. And as I say, there's no real roadmap for this stuff. You've got to just get in amongst all of that data, and there is a lot of it. So I'll give you a little bit of a look around here now with the camera. I don't know how the inverter whine is going to come through, so apologies if it rings people's ears off. So let's do some Blair Witch action. So over here on the side of the inverter, you'll see where I've put two of my brass posts on here to connect the high voltage in. You will also see this rather interesting hole in the side of the casing. This inverter, unbeknownst to me when I bought it, had been taken out of a crashed car, and some part of the car went into the inverter here while the power was still on, and there was a lovely black burn mark on the logic board in there, and so I had to kind of take the cover off and bash this back out. So that really helped with my confidence that this whole thing was going to work. But it does work, so apparently you really can kill a Toyota inverter, even if you crash it, short circuit it, and then sell it to some unsuspecting eBay customer, me, who then does something completely unprecedented with it. So here we have obviously transaxle doing transaxle-y things. Here we have our MG1 resolver wiring, MG2 is in the back, you won't be able to see it. Zombieverter VCU, data cable to the inverter, and just some signal cables here and a 12 volt power supply. Now, guess what you guys that have purchased the GS450 VCU will be able to do soon? Yes, this, if you so wish. So, there it is, folks. It's turning. I can make it turn a little bit faster, but the power supply is completely gammy. It's supposed to be 60 volts, 5 amps, but it's really about 3 amps. So I'm sure that's a genuine mistake by the Long Way power supply company. Anywho, yes, more to come soon on our Gen 3 system. Okay folks, so I think because I ended up rabbiting on for much longer than I planned on the VCU part, that I'm going to break this video out into a few different episodes. We leave this one just purely dealing with the VCU and the Gen 3 Prius stuff that you've just seen and all that. I will shoot a segment when the weather improves, just driving the cars around out there with the 7 Series and the 3 Series. You've seen all that before. It doesn't, you know, look or sound any particularly different just because we're using the new VCU. I can show you, I guess, some of the web interface stuff, but you can kind of, you know, again, see a good bit of that from here. So I will wrap this up here. Do check the links in the description. As I said, I'll put in a link to the VCU thread. Hopefully you'll be seeing this on 2 platforms now. Also, links in the description there to Patreon and PayPal in case you wish to financially support me, which is completely crazy. Quite a revamped EV-BMW web shop. Thanks again to kindness of very talented web designer on the openinverter forum that gave of his time to do that for me, so thank you very much, because not only am I crap at embedded programming, I'm crap at web programming too. Yay! So What else in there? Usual things like JLC, PCB, the forum, web shop, la la la. So, okay, I'll break off there. We will hopefully see you in the next episode. Now you have two platforms to dislike, do not share, do not subscribe to any of this nonsense. And so, yes, I will leave you there with the thought of happy VCU programming.